there exists a hierarchy of actions where in order to solve a bigger problem, we have to solve a smaller problem, or sometimes a few smaller problems, let's say. And this is why attributing events and actions to actors is so hard. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert D. Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. In one of my recent videos, the avalanche model of big events, see the link in the description, I've talked about how it is hard sometimes to attribute big events to, let's say, a simple motivation, like one group of people decided to do something and they've produce this big event, because usually in big events a lot of groups of people are involved. This is kind of by definition of a big event, right, etc., etc. But here I wish to talk about how on all the scales, not just the big scale, we have, let's say, a problem of a different sort in attributing actions and events to people or groups of people. In particular, actions and events that follow from these actions, rather. So, yes, and again, it's scalable, so it's fit for any scale, like starting from an individual to basically countries or even groups of countries or something like that. And I'm gonna give you a lot of examples, just like in that video with Avalanche. I'm not sure if I gave a lot of examples there, but here I will, at least like a few. But let me start with a chess analogy, which would actually pretty much entail all of what I wanted to say here. So in chess, your main goal is to kill the opponent's king. Maybe not necessarily kill, but basically kill. Okay, let's just put it this way. So, but the problem is, the king is protected usually. It's protected at the very beginning, like it's literally in the middle of a million of other pieces. And it's protected for most of the game as well. So, in order to kill the king, there is a situation on the board where you have to kill the queen first. Like, the queen has such a position that she can cover the king from various angles, so you have to get rid of the queen first. Well, then maybe the queen is covered by a pawn, which covers it from a good position for your bishop to attack the queen, or something to that effect. So you can see how this simple action that you want to make, which is killing the king, kind of requires a different action, which is killing the queen, but you cannot kill the queen either. It requires another action, like killing the pawn, or at least like distracting it, baiting it somewhere, etc. So you have to make a completely different move. You're not even attacking the king. Your actual goal right now is to distract the pawn, right? So maybe you move your pawn so it gets eaten by the enemy pawn, and then you move your bishop, you kill the queen, etc., etc. So from an outsider's point of view, your sacrifice of your own pawn looks completely stupid. Like, what are you doing? But in your grand plan, it actually leads you to killing the enemy king eventually, even though it looks like you're doing something really stupid. You're sacrificing your own piece for nothing, essentially, at least on the surface. And this is kind of the model I want to talk about here, where the problem you're trying to solve does not have an immediate solution, or at least it's not present. You cannot solve it with just some simple action, but rather it requires some secondary action, which requires some tertiary action, etc., etc. It may actually branch out to infinity, as you might guess. So yeah, and by the way, speaking about this irrational sacrifice of your own pawn, on the surface irrational at least, watch my video Relativity of Rationality, where I talk about exactly this kind of situation, where some events, when perceived on smaller scale, look irrational, even though if you look at them at the bigger scale, in our case it's killing the king, they're actually completely rational and make absolutely perfect sense. Okay. So, and by the way, speaking of chess, it's such a racist game, don't you think? We have black people fighting white people, essentially, and even more so, the white people have the first move. That's kind of racist, you know? So, I'm kind of surprised chess is still not banned in the United States, but yeah. Let's go on. Another analogy I have is fermions. in physics. So fermions are these particles with a spin equal to 1/2 of Planck's constant, or at least, like, you know, any multipliers of 1/2. I mean, something divided by 2, basically, of Planck's constant. So yeah, and there's a Pauli's principle which prohibits fermions from taking the same quantum state. So 2 fermions have to be in the different quantum states. And it's kind of the same issue as in chess. So if an electron wants to join an atom, let's say, so we have a nucleus, like, with a certain charge, and you add an electron to it, well, it would try to fill, like, the lowest possible level. If it's already filled by other electrons, it would try to go to a different level. But if this level is also filled, it's going to go to another level, etc., etc. So it's kind of the same idea. I hope you feel it. Like, you want to kill the king. If you can't kill the king, you try to kill the queen, which is protecting the king. If you cannot kill the queen, you're trying to bait the pawn that's protecting the queen, you know, and you go further and further and further down this hierarchy, actually. So, yeah, same idea, essentially, right? So you might say, well, in chess it's the same, right? If the tile is occupied by some piece, you cannot enter it unless it's opponent's piece, and then you can eat it, right? Something like that. Same idea is in Newton's cradle. That's another example of the same kind of mechanism, I guess. So you have all these balls, and you, like, put one of them higher, and you let it go, and it hits the other ball, but this ball cannot move because it has different balls on both sides of it, so it just pushes the other ball. The other ball cannot move either, so it just pushes another ball, and this ball, maybe it's the last ball, so then it can jump up. So this is the same idea. So we cannot kill the king, we cannot move here. We have to transition to next action, which is killing the queen, but we cannot do it either. So we transition to the next action, like whatever is available. Like, at least we can bait the pawn, maybe. Then we bait the pawn. So this is the idea. Or maybe we have to prepare the baiting of the pawn. So you have to, like, make this combination of, I don't know, like 5 moves in advance. And then the opponent makes a completely unexpected move, and all of it falls apart, and you have to come up with a different plan. So yeah. So hopefully you see the idea. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. Or we might think about this screenplay, like a plot of a play in a theater, or a novel, or an actual movie, or a TV series, etc., where we have, like, the main conflict that the protagonist, let's say, wants to solve. Like, they have some, like, internal conflict, or there is a conflict in the world they live in, or whatever. So they're trying to solve this conflict, but it's not immediately solvable. So they go to the very next option, like what would at least get us closer to solving the main conflict. But then some new problem arises. They're trying to solve this other problem in order to solve this secondary thing. But the new problem may be also unsolvable, so they have to go elsewhere and try to solve some proximal problem, etc., etc. And it provides this dynamic, this hamster wheel kind of motion, which essentially is what is driving the plot forward. That is kind of driving you closer to the main goal. My plate is non-compliant. It's driving you forward towards the main goal. It's what is giving the energy to the plot, you might say. But it's the same model that we have here, that I've just described. So that's why kind of the real life is actually, like, theater is a good model of real life, let's put it this way, at least in a narrative sense. Alright, what else did I want to talk about? Well, kind of a semi-conclusion to this part. So I've described the basic model, and hopefully you kind of get it. And a conclusion to this is that it makes, like, the backtracking of events and actions, actually more actions than events, but events that follow from actions probably, very difficult, as you might see. So searching for real motivation of actors is pretty much impossible in this perspective. Like, you have to really put yourself in their shoes, but you're not in their shoes. You don't have all the information, all the, like, the value systems, the relationships, all kinds of stuff. They do. So you cannot really judge, like, what are they even doing? What are they trying to achieve even? So it's very difficult to attribute any event to some action and the action to its motivation in its respect. So we can only maybe like straight line project, right? We say, okay, this person is stupid. They just sacrificed their pawn for nothing. All right, they did it because they were stupid. This is kind of our straight line projection from reason to motive, from motive to like behavior, essentially. So the person wanted to maybe harm themselves, so they sacrificed the pawn. But we don't see the bigger picture. That's kind of the problem, at least on this naive, superficial level. So we just project in a straight line, even though a person might have moved from beyond the corner or something to that effect, you know? It's like we see an apple falling from the tree, but maybe we missed the moment when it fell from the tree, but we see a falling apple and we like just project its trajectory infinitely upwards, and we say, well, it must have fallen from the sky, right? Well, like, it makes sense, it was falling right down, so it must have come from the sky. So this is the reasoning that people usually employ when they're trying to judge on somebody's motives. And it's obviously wrong. And my model shows you that it's obviously wrong, where we have like secondary and even tertiary and quaternary or whatever events and actions being in like subservient to the main action, which is like impossible to be made at the moment. But at least these smaller actions kind of propel us towards our main goal. So yeah, and the main goal may be invisible or even misunderstood, or both, by the outside observer. So hence, I think we need, when we were trying to like evaluate someone's motivations and etc., like in politics and whatever, not only in politics, like in personal life as well, we need to look at the most basic things, actually, like what are they trying to achieve, like in general, like what's their thing, what are they about, right? So something to that effect, like big background processes, and then we have to properly, that's a key word, eventify them. See my video, Events versus Processes, where I talk about how what we perceive is actually processes, but we're trying to perceive them as events. We're trying to condense them into these solid kind of, you know, facts, factoids, whereas in reality they aren't. Yeah, and we have to keep all of this in mind that I've just said, that the main action often has to be proxied by secondary, tertiary, quaternary, etc. actions. Like if, okay, I wanted to give you another example with like, if you're on an island, like, and there's no one there, and like, you need some food, right? And like, you're alone, how do you call it? Like, uninhabited island. Well, you think, well, where am I gonna get any food? Well, maybe I need to fish, right? Maybe I need to catch some fish. But how are you gonna catch some fish? Well, maybe you make a fishing pole. Well, how do you make a fishing pole? Well, maybe you need some big branch or something to that effect. But maybe like the branch is too big for you to just, you know, crush it with your hands. So you have to make an axe of some sorts to like cut it. I mean, I'm completely making this up, obviously. So you're making an axe. So if somebody watches you and they look at you like making an axe, they would think that, what, okay, maybe you're gonna hunt on some wild boar or something, or maybe you want to suicide with this axe, I don't know. But they probably wouldn't think that you're trying to go fishing. Like, who goes fishing with an axe? But you're trying to go fishing because ultimately you want to eat, you need to go fishing, you need a fishing pole, you need a branch, you need an axe to get a branch. So this is the hierarchy of actions you're trying to make, you're trying to do. But again, it would be misunderstood by an outside observer. Or look at Ukraine, right? Watch my video, Ukraine Special, link in the description, where I've described it like more than a year ago, a year and a half, like whenever that thing started. I don't remember anymore. So yeah, where I describe it, how like, we have the world superpower, the world hegemon, the United States, And the second superpower, United Kingdom, superseded by the European Union. And now European Union tries to kick the Americans out of Europe. Well, the problem is there is plenty of American troops in Europe, American military bases and other installations. So you have to get rid of that somehow. Well, how are you going to get rid of that? Well, you need a European army at least. So you would have at least a formal excuse to get rid of the NATO troops, aka American troops in Europe. So how do you create a European army? Well, you have to make an excuse for a European army. Then we go to, like Macron and Scholz went to Moscow, right, and met our good friend Vladimir from Moscow and asked him to attack our other good friend Vladimir from Kiev. And like we make an agreement with them and the thing proceeds, right? But the ultimate goal, killing the king, is kicking the Americans out of Europe. But it's invisible if you don't think in these terms. It's invisible to the outside observer. Okay, unless you're into conspiracy theories, right? Then many things start to becoming visible. Just as I've said in my video, by the way, I just want to kind of add this on because I didn't stress that enough, I feel. In my video about scientific worldview, I've mentioned that conspiracy theories are really popular because, well, that's the part I should have stressed, because they have coherence. They are coherent. Or they have integrity, rather. That's the word I'd used. So scientific worldview, which doesn't exist as I claim, doesn't have integrity, thus. And thus we need something that has integrity in order to survive in the hyperinformation that we have today. And conspiracy theories are perfectly fit for that because they are both coherent, actually, and they have integrity. So you can pretty much fit new data into the previous theory. Like, of course, it contradicts falsifiability, but we don't care about this, you know? We want to live in a coherent picture of the world where, you know, it doesn't break every day from the new piece of news. Forgive me for the tautology. So yeah, conspiracy theories are especially powerful and especially popular, and are going to become even more powerful and popular because they have integrity, and science does not, because it's not a worldview, again. All right. So yeah, returning to the topic of this video, we have this delayed action. And hopefully I've demonstrated it to you many times already. This second order action and many other orders downwards. We have the hierarchy of actions, as I've already said, where in order to solve a bigger problem, we need to solve the smaller problem first. Like imagine I'm cleaning my frying pan today. You might say, well, again, just projecting it in a straight line. Well, maybe you have an OCD and you just clean stuff randomly, or you're like a cleanliness freak in general, or something to that effect, or you just love order, or something to that effect. But maybe I just want to fry eggs tomorrow, and I just want to have a frying pan clean so I can fry eggs tomorrow, because I know I'm gonna be hungry tomorrow. So I want to have a frying pan available to fry my eggs there. So yeah, another example, just like many others that I've already gave you. All right, so to conclude this rant, there exists a hierarchy of actions where in order to solve a bigger problem, we have to solve a smaller problem, or sometimes a few smaller problems, let's say. And this is why attributing events and actions to actors is so hard. Especially when lots of groups of people, especially powerful people, are involved in these actions and events. So again, like the avalanche model, it described how big events are hard to attribute because a lot of people are interested. Whereas this model, this chess model, I guess, or hierarchy of actions model, it shows you how even a single actor, while maneuvering throughout this maze of external power distributions, has to act in a non-trivial way, where they have to achieve their main goal through, again, a complex labyrinth of secondary, tertiary, and quaternary, and quintillion goals, all right, and actions. Okay, so again, that's why we have to discard the events and look at the background, the processes, the masses, if you wish, in the sense of like the bulkness, the bulk of power, right? And we have to measure them properly, and I mean all of these words, measure them properly. What do I mean by that? Well, just as a simple example, we have again the epoch of US domination. It's going to come to an end relatively soon, like in 50 years or less. And the US has brought this idea that in kind of the cultural domain, that economy is key. Like if your economy is strong, you are strong. And exactly because of that, we think that, for example, China is like the world's second superpower, or even the first superpower already, because its economy is so huge. But is it? Like, is China the world's second superpower? Is economy key? That's a good question. I would claim it's not, actually. Like, again, it's just a symptom of American domination that we even think this way, that the economy is key. But it's not. I mean, it's certainly important, but it's not the main thing. At least in absolute sense. In this reality we're living in, I mean, like today, here, it may be, at least to a large degree, but I'd still claim that it's not the main thing, even right now. Like in my video about anime, I've explained, link in the description, I've explained why Eastern Asian countries would never lead. They just cannot. Again, for cultural reasons. And that's one of the reasons why economy is not the main thing. Like culture is much stronger than economy, I believe. And in my video, other much older video, Paper Tiger, also see the link in the description, I analyzed their Chinese history and explained why, again, China is overrated. Long story short. And you can already see that, again, if we analyze the bulkness, the masses, the background. You can see that China's population is already on the decline. So, like, there were fears, you know, like Russians are saying, oh, Chinese are gonna colonize the Siberia, like they're gonna send like millions of people here. Well, their own population is on the decline already, guys. And have all these ghost cities where nobody lives in. Like, I don't think China is gonna colonize anyone, actually. Like, they never did throughout their history. Again, see my video, Paper Tiger. Nor they would. Maybe Africa, but they wouldn't colonize it. Rather, they would, like, colonize it in the sense that exploit it, right? Yes, I would agree. They would probably do that. It's actually inevitable that China would colonize Africa in this sense. It's already doing that, by the way. Yeah, so if you're looking a place to invest into, I would recommend India rather than China. India is on a huge rise right now. And they actually surpassed China in terms of population. Okay. This is not an investment advice, blah, 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 disclaimer. I'm not the, how do you call it, certified, whatever. You get the idea. Don't listen to me. Think for yourself. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.